Hello, RGL3000 students. Obviously, we have ourselves a bit of a challenge here with this COVID-19 situation. You received an email from me already about my suggestions as to how to proceed. Of course, the college face-to-face meetings are shut down, but because your course is hybrid, ostensibly, I'm able to give you an hour and a half's worth of assignment during this week. But really, all I want to do is for us to keep up to date on our lectures, as how I'll invest our hour and a half for the week. And I'll send out quizzes which you can take at any time. And if you take the quiz, you will get your points for the quiz, okay? So don't worry about that. You know, my feelings on these things is that, well, we don't have our classes and so on. One thing we don't want to have happen, even though I'm not allowed to formally assign it, is that we don't want to get too far behind so we get a pile up at the end of the term, because the latest reports I have received is that the president does not plan on extending the term. So while I won't formally suggest anything, my advice is obvious, that if we don't want to get piled up at the end of the term, we might want to consider that you just carry on as planned. And that's why I'm submitting videos on our lectures, so we don't need to fall behind on our lectures, okay? Now, you can always email me if you have specific questions and problems. After this week, I will also set up, assuming, of course, that we don't have any in-class sessions for the rest of the term, I will be setting up some times for some Zoom chat sessions that we can explore as we go along, okay? Now, these Zoom chat sessions I'll explain later on, but it'll be an opportunity for you to get on and ask me any questions that you might have about your paper, solving any problems with your paper, and so on. Okay, so that we'll still have, we'll still be chatting about that, all right? And the other aspect that I want you to take into account is that prior to the instructions for the final exam, as per my normal approach, will be sent out well in advance of the exam. We've already agreed on our exam dates. As far as I can tell so far, those will remain the same, all right? And I will open up a chat session as well, or I'll give you a video, or both probably, in terms of preparing for the final exam as well, all right? So remember, I'm able to give you a certain amount of work because it's hybrid, so I'm able to ostensibly offer you an hour and a half's work, but use your common sense, all right? And so today I just want to make sure that we're communicating, that I'm beginning to continue on with some of our lecture notes, all right? And so that we don't get behind on that. And my main concern, of course, is that we don't fall behind. And then we're all jammed up at the end of the term, all right? So let's just keep going. And to the extent that I'm allowed to do that this week, that's what this video lecture is about. And presumably by next week, we should be fully engaged, although obviously not in class sessions. So we'll be shifting entirely to online. But in my courses, they're already set up very much like online courses. You have all my slides, you have all the reading material. My slides are not normal slides by short bullets, but the full text is there, and that's by design. I know it can seem lengthy when I'm lecturing, but the reason for that is exactly this. The slides are appropriate for an online course. All right, the rest of the readings stand, and I will be chipping in every week with one or more videos as we try to move you through the course so that we can graduate, obviously, which is the ultimate objective, and hopefully get jobs and move on. All right? So today I want to talk to you a little bit about Lesson 10, which was monetizing benefits and costs in environmental economics. Let's just go through that. I just want to share with you some of the key methodologies that are used to monetize those benefits of a regulatory action that would not otherwise be monetized in the marketplace, okay? and we've discussed this before, what types of things benefits would not be monetized in the marketplace. And certainly in the area of the environment, that's a common issue, obviously. I mean, if you're cleaning up the river by regulating water pollution, how does one monetize the benefits of cleaning up a river? And these kinds of things need methodologies to do that, and that's what I'm going to talk about a bit today, all right? So that we can just keep going. But before I go any further, let's keep this in perspective, okay? Follow the instructions of public health officials, follow the instructions of the executive at the college, but keep chipping away. Because there's no use compounding the stress by having a huge pile up at the end of the term. Just keep going. I'm not able to give you some more specific guidance beyond an hour and a half's worth, according to the college right now. But anyway, we have our lecture and we just keep going. Okay, let's talk about this topic today. We know that returns are not monetized. Not all benefits are monetized in the marketplace, and so therefore we need to use surrogate indicators to monetize the benefits that we're identifying. Okay, it's important to realize that the concept of surrogate indicators is not the same as the concept of performance indicators. Surrogate indicators indirectly measure a phenomenon. Okay, performance indicators are things that you target for achievement. Two different things, but sometimes students confuse those two concepts, and I just want to make clear that what we're dealing with here is ways that we take those factors that are non-monetized and we turn them into monetizable factors. Why do we monetize? So that we can use these types of benefits within cost-benefit analysis. And cost-benefit analysis, as you've already learned, monetizes both the costs and the benefits, as opposed to cost-effectiveness analysis that monetizes the cost but only quantifies the benefits. You recall all that discussion that we had, okay? There are three different categories for monetizing, three different classes of technologies or techniques we use to monetize. The first is called revealed preference methods, the second stated preference methods, and the third benefit transfer methods, which is on your slide 4, all right? So revealed preference methods fall into also subcategories, which we're going to talk about briefly here, all right? Now, for instance, analysts, when we want to consider things that are sort of not valued or monetized in the marketplace, sometimes we can observe existing behavior of people to determine how much of a value they're placing on something. The other aspect of these types of methodologies is what's called the heidonic price method, which is the first one you see on slide 5. The hedonic price method essentially estimates costs or benefits and their monetized value by taking similar studies that have been done in other areas where they've monetized these things. Okay. And then what we do is we're able to compare these costs. For example, if you're buying, if you're looking at housing prices, for example, let's say we wanted to investigate the impact that keeping old growth trees. Let's say it's a greenfield project and somebody is building a house or is going to build a real estate development, and they have a question, and that question is, how much value do potential buyers place on old growth trees on their property when they take possession of their house? And because trees obviously don't have a price tag, we ask the question, well, how would we figure that out? And the hedonic price method essentially takes, let's say you're thinking of building a certain type of a bungalow home, okay? And there's a similar price bungalow home in an area where they've basically bulldozed the land. It's just going to be an open field construction. So we can identify how much value buyers place on old growth trees by comparing the price differential that somebody gets for selling these types of homes in an old growth tree setting as opposed to a clear field setting. And then we can use that differential, assuming that the houses are largely the same. we can use that comparison to value the environmental properties of the one real estate investment as opposed to the other. So the underlying rationale for this hedonic pricing method is that the price of a marketed good is related to its characteristics or the services it provides. And these can differ for basically the same kind of house because of different additional attributes. In this case, it would be the old growth trees as opposed to a clear field construction. All right. Now there are many examples that I can give besides a house that we could use to do that, and it's the requirement is that you need to find one circumstance that has many of the characteristics that you want to look at or you want to value, and another opportunity that has that doesn't have those characteristics but has otherwise the same characteristics as the first opportunity. So in this case we had two bungalows that were essentially same. Their difference was one was in old growth trees and one was not. The price differential was then attributed to the old growth trees. So any scenario where that occurs, you can monetize benefits that do not otherwise have a monetized value in the marketplace. Okay. The second method is the travel cost method under this broad category. Okay. The travel cost method is used to estimate economic use values associated with services that are not monetized because they are provided by public bodies or are otherwise free. Okay. So an example of this would be, let's say we were in a developing country and we wanted to figure out why local villages were not using one clinic and instead were driving past that clinic to go to an entirely different clinic, which was quite considerably down the road or up the highway or in another village quite a ways away. And you're asking the question, well, why is it that these people are traveling that extra distance and bearing that extra cost in terms of time, gasoline, whatever the case may be that they need to do to travel, taking the train or the bus or whatever? Why is it that they're going past the one clinic to go all the way to the other clinic? And then what we would do is we would take clinic 1 and clinic 2 and compare them in terms of the services they offer. Okay, so let's say clinic 1, let's say it was a poor village and clinic 1 was close by, but it still took people that don't have a lot of resources a good part of a day to get there with their kids to get checkups or whatever the case may be. And the other clinic was maybe even a longer day to get there. Okay, but they go by the first clinic and go to the second clinic, and you're asking yourself, well, why are they doing that? Why are they bearing that additional cost? And so then you can look at the characteristics of the two clinics and find out what people are how much value people are placing on the attributes of the second clinic as opposed to the first one that they're driving by. For example, let's say clinic 1 is in an open field, okay? Developing country people in horse-drawn cart or whatever the case may be, our old rickety car, are driving past that and going to clinic 2, and you're saying, well, what the heck's going on here? What is it that they're placing so much value on in clinic 2? And then you go to clinic 2 and you find out that there's shopping nearby, there's groceries, there's things that they can't get in their own village, things like that, okay? And so what you begin to realize is that the people are placing a travel cost value on those additional factors over and above what the core value of the clinic is. So we can place a value on those characteristics. Why is that important? Because it basically leads to answering a number of questions with respect to how you should design clinics in the future and these kinds of things, and how much money you should put into those additional features of the clinic, because that money is being spent anyway, but it's being spent by poor people who are traveling the extra distance. Okay, so this is called the travel cost method. It's used quite extensively to study reasons why certain sites attract people more than other sites, even though the other site may be closer. It's used often by police for things like safety considerations of streets, crime prevention, lighting around bus stops, any number of different things. It allows us to identify how much we should invest in those activities, because that money's being spent anyway by the travel costs of the people using it. Okay? Averting expenditures method is used to measure the costs incurred by individuals to protect themselves from a known human health or safety risk. Okay, averting expenditures would be one estimate of the value placed on the returns for avoiding that risk. Okay, for instance, if a neighborhood daycare 1, was underutilized because of perceptions of an unsafe surrounding area, parents incurred higher costs to bring their children to another daycare 2. Then the returns on the averting expenditures, signifying the benefits of daycare 2, could be assessed against the cost of providing better security around daycare 1. Okay, so it's a way that we can plan expenditures, plan how we can attribute or move the costs being incurred by citizens to avert concerns that they have over safety or health or any number of other things, and apply it to the first option as opposed to the second option. Again, that's used extensively for studying things like urban planning, police security and safety, any number of other things. When the police want to say, well, this is the benefit if we do this, okay? So just like they need to be able to communicate to their political masters or whatever, well, why are we spending this money here? Well, because the benefit, we can see that the citizenry receives this benefit. Well, how do you know that? Because this is what we know they're spending to avert or to avoid the option 1 as opposed to the option 2, okay? So we take that expenditure of averting from 1 to 2, and we say, this is what it would cost. This is the benefit of fixing 1 as opposed to 2. Okay? And we can then be more scientific about attributing a benefit to something that we want the system to invest in to bring about a change. Okay? The cost of illness method is a real, very, very common approach. You will all recall the examples I gave about the project I did in sub-Saharan Africa on pesticides, improving the sound management of chemicals of pesticides in sub-Saharan Africa in the agricultural sector. You will all recall that example, and that was a cost of illness method that we used. We based the question asked, how much is it costing us not to do better with the sound management of pesticides? And we were able to identify the costs that were incurred by things like poisonings, hospital visits, missed time by farmers' kids getting sick and missing schools, and so on. That was a huge project, but I think you get the point that we can attribute a cost to these types of illnesses. There is a real cost. So then we can show that by acting on that hazard, that risk profile, we can save X numbers of dollars, and those dollars can be devoted to more useful purposes, obviously. Not making people sick, but avoiding them getting sick. And this is what it's worth to act. And this is what's going to happen if you don't act. This is how the cost of illness will continue to increase with time. So the cost of illness approach basically looks at a hazard or a risk and says, this is what it's costing you. This is what this hazard or risk is costing you. And that's called cost of illness method. It's heavily used in the area of hazards and risks related to occupational harm, chemical harm, anything like that where there's harm and there's a cost of illness that can be attributed to the unsound management of that risk. Okay? So the cost of illness approach is really, really important. Those were your revealed preferences methods. The stated preference methods are essentially that. They're, rather than observing existing behavior like a revealed preference method and then going back and saying, why did you do that? What did it cost you? And then being able to take that, monetize the benefit of the place that people are going to as opposed to the ones they've avoided. And things like the cost of illness approach, those are all things where you see what is actually happening. You observe it, you can measure it, and so on. Stated preference methods, however, are used when the event has not occurred yet, but you're asking people what they would pay to do this. So you're basically asking, it's a way of using focus groups, surveys, and other techniques. And obviously, this is an area where economists will enter into the discussion and say there will be far less reliability in the data for stated preference methods as opposed to revealed preference methods, which is probably correct. But nevertheless, there are instances where we might want to use stated preference methods. So these are essentially basically surveys, questions, okay? They rely on information attained by asking individuals to state their willingness to pay, value for the increased provision of a good, avoidance of a public bad, etc. Okay? And these types of issues are used all the time. They're used in virtually any number of political milieu, from public opinion surveys to commercial focus groups, to marketing exercises, to any number of different factors, where we use answers to specific questions to say that this is how much value that the respondent places on any question that we have for them, okay? And we can usually convert that into some kind of a monetized value, okay? The first of these preference methods is the contingent valuation method, okay? This is a survey that asks how much money people would be willing to pay or willing to accept to maintain the existence of or be compensated for the loss of something they value. For example, we use this a lot when we're deciding whether we'll establish national parks. Okay, whether we'll, when we ask citizens, how much value do they place in green spaces around new housing developments? How much they value old growth forest? How much they value being able to see wildlife in a particular area or something like that. All of these valuation methods can be used, all these contingent valuation method can be used to ask people that question. There's going to be a significant error factor, but that error factor can be adjusted if it's compared to other instances where, where parks were added and X numbers of dollars were spent and the people continued to support the exercise and so on. In other words, there's some cross-verification that can improve the reliability of these methods, okay? Then there's contingent ranking method. This type of survey asks respondents to compare and rank alternate program outcomes with various characteristics, including costs. So you might say to local citizens, do you want this park, this clinic, and a mall to be in your general vicinity, or we can only pressure the builder to do two of those? So which do you value most? Or if you're asking people to compare 3 different benefits on one option and 3 different benefits on another option, and asking them to rank them. Okay, and that's a way that we can attribute certain monetary values to alternative contingent ranking methods. Okay, so people might be asked to compare and rank several mutually exclusive environmental improvement programs under consideration for a watershed, each of which has different outcomes and different costs. And we say that your total budget is this. What's better? Do you want the package offered by option 1 or the package offered by option 2? Then we know how to attribute a dollar value for the perception that the people have about the value of something. Okay? Conjoint analysis or choice experiment method is another one. It's used a lot in focus groups. It's primarily used in marketing. It is typically used to determine what features a new product or service should have and how they should be differentially priced, value returns, while faced with trade-offs between the options. Okay, you can get this, but you can't have that, or you can have that, but you can't have that because the budget envelope says that you only have $500, or whatever the example may be. And so then we can begin to attribute the values to various options that the person can choose. Respondents could be asked to choose between different features of daycare services, okay, for children set at different prices. And then we know that at that price they value the following 3 attributes more than the bottom 3 attributes, and so on. And we can begin to attribute proportional dollar values to those benefits or those wants. And those techniques can be used quite extensively. And they can be used extensively in environment, in the design of housing projects, in the design of park systems, in the design of buildings, any number of different things. They can be used in any number of different scenario where you want to get value from something. Okay. The final technique is called the benefit transfer method. This method relies on information from existing studies that have applied methods for monetizing things that are also applicable to your study. Now, that's common secondary research. A lot of what you'll be doing for your RIASs will be this kind of secondary research. Somebody has already attributed a value to something based on a methodology that they used, or they had more resources, more time, more opportunities to monetize a benefit. It's a similar benefit, one of the benefits that you're also looking at in your study. So what you do is you import their cost estimate, but perhaps needing to adjust their cost or their benefit estimate in terms of the monetary benefit that somebody sees in a value that is not otherwise monetized in the marketplace. And you've taken that study and you've tried to apply it to your study with appropriate modifications. And those modifications would be situational, okay? They would be, things that you would say, well, this study had this many people who started from this point in whatever was going on. In your study, the subjects of your study might be quite different, and therefore adjustments to those profiles might have to be made. But they're made from the perspective of a comparative case, which is the benefit transfer method. So you're taking an existing example of somebody that, say, looked at how people valued cleaner water in a river system in one study, and you're applying it to a river system in your study, but maybe the river was less polluted to begin with, or there were fewer people, or there were fewer stresses on the river system, or whatever, and you need to make adjustments to the types of values that study A placed on it as opposed to your study. But this is how most secondary research is done, right? If the first study estimated the following value that people attributed to A, your study might need to adjust that for some particular reason because the circumstances of your study are different. Okay, so that's called the benefit transfer method. Okay, now these techniques are quite common in terms of what's done in more sophisticated studies. Obviously, I'm not expecting that to be the case in your studies, your RIASs, but I want you to be aware that there are techniques out there for monetizing benefits that are not otherwise monetized in the marketplace. Obviously, more sophisticated studies, particularly in the area of the environment, particularly in the area of public health, get quite sophisticated with these techniques. My goal for you right now is just to be aware that these techniques exist. They're out there and they can be used. Obviously, in the context of your particular projects, you're going to be primarily concerned with the benefit transfer method because you'll be using existing studies. And those studies may be from other countries and you need to adjust for the Canadian context, adjust your estimates or whatever. But the point is that you'll be using this type of secondary research rather than some of the original research methods like what we did in sub-Saharan Africa, where we had to hire people in each of the countries. We had to go into hospitals, find out costs, go into poison centers, find out. And so we could attribute very detailed numbers to the cost of illness because this was a very high-profile study released by the United Nations. But in your case, you'll be doing primarily a benefit transfer method. Okay? So, but that's okay. Anyway, so we'll keep on going with our RIASs, try to keep the ball rolling on that so we don't get backed up at the end of the term. That's all I wanted to cover off today. I will send out your quiz as well, as if you haven't already received it, it'll be there. The point is that that quiz is if you do that quiz this week or next, you'll get the participation grades. Okay. Because this week is a shutdown week for all except courses that are fully online already, or for the half of the time, quote unquote, that the hybrid course is what yours is supposed to be exercising. Next week, I fully expect that we'll be doing very similar stuff. I'll be issuing you video lectures. You'll be getting your quizzes. We'll be moving forward with discussion boards. You'll be getting your papers ready, and I will be scheduling chat sessions as we go along. Okay, so everybody, just stay calm, follow the instructions of public health officials, listen to what the college is telling you in terms of official executive direction, and I'm sure we're all going to get through this fine. You know, you can email me if anything urgent comes up or if there's specific questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, that's it for now. I should do a similar lecture for you for tomorrow's class, which would have been normally tomorrow's class, and then we'll go from there. All right, take care now, and smile, be happy. It was a sunny day today, right? Take it easy. Bye bye now.